Hi, everyone, and welcome to Build Your Sales Machine podcast and nowadays also videocast. My name is Theo and I'm CEO at Out2Bund. And today I'm having with me Kevin Urrutia. Kevin, please let me know if I'm pronouncing your surname the right way. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, and hopefully all these going to bring value to you. Main topics would evolve around inbound and outbound strategies and how and when to use which, and how by using those we can actually attract more customers. Kevin is the CEO of NYC-based Voy Media. Kevin, please, could you present yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Urrutia. I'm one of the founders of Voy Media, and my background is computer science. So I went to college for computer science programming. I worked at Silicon Valley out in California. I was there for 4 years, and then I left to kind of do my own startup. And eventually, I left when I was like 5 years ago. So when I was 25. Now I'm 30. So then I started eventually starting Voy Media, which is an e-commerce, kind of like we help a lot of e-commerce founders with their Facebook ads and just sort of like general go-to-market strategy on how they should, market themselves online. And that's what Voy Media is. And right now we're about 20 people. So we've grown from when we started about 3 years ago to about 20, where we can really come in and work with a founder or other like directors of marketing to help their creative strategy on Facebook.
Awesome. Could you tell us something that's not on your LinkedIn profile? I guess that what you just described could also be read on your LinkedIn and on the Voy Media's website. But yeah, something that generally the wider public do not know about yourself.
Yeah. So basically, when I left California, I wanted to do my own startup because that's kind of been always the goal for me, is do my own thing. So my first company that I left that's not on my LinkedIn is I run a maid company called Maid Sailors. And so for the maid company, we started about 5 years ago. Right now, we have over 150 employees. So we're in New York City, we're in Brooklyn, we're in New Jersey, and we're also in Chicago. We have Maid Sailors, but we've also acquired 4 other cleaning companies too as well. So that's kind of how I got started into
Are you still involved in this business?
Yeah, it's still my company. Yeah. So
okay.
I started that company 5 years ago. And then now, obviously, basically, like with any company, you probably know, it's all about building a team and structure. So I'm still involved in it, like kind of like more like, hey, what's going on? But then you have a team that builds it, that runs it for you. And that's kind of what I've always wanted to do. Kind of like you think about like maybe the 4-hour work week, where it's like, hey, you build a team to sort of do it. And I think that is the base perfect sense. And of course, people always ask me like, oh, why a cleaning company? I just thought like, hey, I wanted to build something that where there's just demand and there's people that are going to need it. I think a lot of people get stuck in sometimes I need to build the perfect first company. But for me, it was about, hey, I want to learn about building something, learn about startup. And then that eventually led me to obviously do Voy Media. But in between then, I have my own e-commerce company where we sell like custom products and we sell custom luggages as well. That's also not on my LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's sort of what we do.
You mentioned about your work as a developer, and I want to ask you the first very specific question when it comes to sales and marketing. What was your perspective on sales and marketing back then, being a developer, and how it has changed through time?
Yeah, this is a great question because back then when I was doing just programming, I always thought it was, hey, if you build a really cool product, people are just going to naturally find it and then use it. And that was what I always thought it was. And I didn't realize it was like there was this thing called like marketing and sales where you actually have to like talk to people and make them like buy your products or use your products. And eventually I started learning that more and more because me and my partner Wilson, we would always build like apps, iPhone apps, stuff, and like we would never get users until we realized, oh, there's this thing called marketing. That's when we kind of started learning more about marketing. And I started also learning more about that too when I was working at another company in San Francisco where we raised a lot of money, but we never really did like marketing. And I was like wondering like, how do we have like a nice, cool product, but no one's really using the product that we have. So that's sort of where we kind of learned that you actually need to do sales and marketing. And I think now it's like, I'm in it now because like I kind of do it all the time to all my clients. But even like, if I think about it back then, when I was in college, me and Wilson ran like a development agency where we did like iPhone apps. And I never really thought about it, but I guess what I was doing back then was I was emailing people on Craigslist, which is like the local like services. Yeah. And then I was just like emailing them and calling them. And I just thought I was like more just like I didn't classify that as I was like, oh, I was doing sales, but I guess I was, because I was still like emailing them or talking to them about like how we can build their app, how we can sort of present to them like the structure, the prototypes and the wireframes. I just like didn't think about it as like a sales process essentially. Yeah. But
When did you realize that it's actually a sales process, and that, you know, besides the product, you have to really stress on doing sales and thinking of the general sales strategy?
yeah, this was like really when I was doing the Made company, there was really not that much of a sales process per se, because people would come to our website and then just like book online. And then you would call them like, hey, do you provide this sort of service? And it was more just like kind of like a guidance of like, hey, like we'll do like this type of cleaning. It was really when we started Voy Media like 3 years ago when clients were calling us. And then I was just like, okay, like how come we're losing clients that like want to work with us, but like either I'm saying it wrong, I'm doing something poorly, like, and then I realized it's actually a process where you actually need to just do a discovery call. You need to actually ask them qualifying questions. That's going to make you seem like a really sharp expert. And then it's like, okay, hey, set the agenda really well so you know when the next call is. And that is really when I thought it was like a process. And that's when I started learning more books and reading more stuff. And then now, like, I always tell people, like, when you're doing sales, at least probably you too, like you need to have like a script where you know what to say. And if not, like, you're just going to be on a call and just like say random stuff. Like, but
my
you
personal experience, I also started with scripts, and at some point of time. So when we started Out2Bund, it was 4.5 years ago. For this period until 2020, until nowadays, we've interviewed more than now close to 700 founders, 700 technology companies, all of them doing B2B. And at some point, of course, you start with a script. And my take on that is that once you know your narrative really well, and once you've interviewed hundreds of people, hundreds of potential customers, at some point the script is within your mind.
Yep.
And generally you don't need it, because you sort of really remembered all those questions. They're now they're just in your mind. And the best thing about it is that starting with the script, then you can sort of bend it. And based on the meeting that you are, and I guess you have similar experiences, you can sort of modify the, you know, the extra questions, the extra qualification questions that you want to ask the potential customers.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like I know exactly what I should probably ask them or think about it. But yeah, exactly what you said. Like at a certain point, you just have the script there just to sort of like in case you forget something. But usually when you ask enough times, you know what to ask or sort of what to look for. And then you kind of just really go with the flow. And then, but at the same time, like making sure that it's structured. And I think the biggest thing with the script is sort of when I talk to potential founders, it's like sometimes like they just like completely go off the rails and like what they're describing. I'm just like, okay, the script's like there to like, okay, let's bring it back down to like where the questions are. So yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of Voy Media, how do you do your customer acquisitions right now? Are you inbound centric, outbound? Do you mix both?
Yeah, so we do both right now. We do a lot of inbound where people find us through just like organic channels, and people look for like an advertising agency. We also do personalized emails and personalized videos for on LinkedIn and on email as well. And then that's sort of how we get like a discovery calls booked. Yep.
Would you say that there is a channel that's working for you better than the others?
So right now what's working really well for us is just inbound. So like people find us on Google, that's a really big one. But then we also have like our podcast I was telling you before, where people listen to that and then they email us and work with us. That's another great channel, but that we've been doing the podcast for probably like, I think probably shorter than you, but we've been doing the podcast for about a year now. And it's great because when we're pitching or when we're doing outbound or prospecting, we also tell them like, hey, look at our podcast, look at how we do things on Facebook ads. This way, if it resonates with you, then we think that we could do a perfect fit. And we even now, when we even work with current partners, we will release an episode and we'll tell them like, hey, look, this new tactic or tip we're trying. And that helps improve the confidence in our ability. Because they're like, oh, wow, that's great. That makes sense to me. And then, or like, for example, we're like, oh, we want to like talk about landing pages. And then we'll be like, hey, look, we just released a new episode on landing pages on how you should do them. And then they talk to the account manager. It's like, hey, I saw you guys have an episode on it. I want to try that. So it's like, okay, great. It also helps with upselling.
Interesting combination. What would you say? So based on my experience, it's always been, and when I've been employed for various companies, it's always been a struggle to sort of match the sales and marketing departments and the general strategy, and sort of have a holistic overview of what you're doing on a purely organizational level. And what you're currently saying, I think that you more or less are going towards this balance at Voy Media. How easy or hard it is to achieve something like that? What's going to what's going to be your very practical advice to people listening to us and watching us who are actually founders?
Yeah, I think so right now for sales, like it's completely driven by me. So like and then the marketing is driven by the other partner. So we're both really aligned, like what we want the outcome to be. So I'm like, he's just like, Kevin, like we really need to push, like we'll look at like our accounts and we'll say, okay, it looks like a lot of these clients haven't like been upgraded to something. Okay, Kevin, let's release an episode on, for example, landing pages. And then my job then is to now say, hey partner, we just released an episode on landing pages. And then we talk to the account manager, follow up with the partner, ask if they listened to the episode and did it make sense. If it made sense, okay, come back to me and let's talk about sales and sort of upgrading them to the landing page package. And that's kind of like how it works.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And of course, having in mind the current COVID situation, I simply got asked this question: how has this changed for you in the past 3 months? Now that everything's basically online and NYC based, and currently in NYC, I guess that you're not still doing physical meetings at all.
Yeah. So for us, we have an office in New York City in Midtown near like Times Square. So that's kind of where we were for the past, essentially 2 years. And now we're just completely all remote, which is fine because half our team is remote. So we've always had like a remote like culture where we kind of were always used to like people working from home. And also for our company, we always had like every other Wednesday, we were always work remote because we want to, at least for me and Wilson, another partner, he's actually remote. He's in Taiwan right now. So he wanted our team members to know what it feels like to be remote. That way, because he used to work at Salesforce and Google. He knows it's very easy to have conversations next to each other. But when you're remote,
Indeed.
Sometimes you're missing those. So he wanted the team to be like, hey, let's all do a day where we're remote. That way they can feel like, hey, you guys need to explain things more clearly or else like the teammate won't understand. So we were making a very conscious effort. And now they're all remote. It's like even better because we're used to it. And that's for going for client meetings and meetings such as that. Yeah, of course, before clients would come to our office and we would talk, we would do video recordings with them and we would do photo shoots for our partners and our brands with products and videos. That obviously had to stop. So we're still looking for a solution to that because doing videos and photo shoots is so important for something like a platform like Facebook where you need a great creative. So we haven't found a solution yet. The only solution we have right now is like at-home videos, at-home clips. But we're still looking for that professional type of look as well. And for client meetings, we were still having a lot of them like on Zoom. So that's still fine. We only had some clients come in every once in a while to visit the office when they're like visiting town because we have a lot of clients from just like not New York City.
How about conferences and trade shows? I mean, have you ever leveraged on that channel and way of attracting customers?
No, not yet. I mean, we have our own like meetup that we host in New York City for digital marketers. So we were doing that before COVID and that was working really well. And that was more for just sharing expertise, sharing what we were doing. And of course, just connecting with local people in New York. So that was pretty fun, but we never had like our conference. And that is something that we wanted to sort of build up. Like, okay, let's do meetups for like a year, build a nice email list, build a nice people, like get their speaking reps in, like all that stuff that you kind of need before you kind of like host a conference. And
the
then
groundwork.
Yeah, do the groundwork. Yeah, exactly. And then do that. But like now that it's this COVID thing, we have to cancel them all, which it sucks because we like doing them because like, yeah, I mean, like in the beginning, like I'll tell people like how many people come. I'm like, oh, maybe like 10 people. But then all those 10 people, they'll talk to you. And then it's like, great. It's like I was meeting people from like, I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy. Like this meetup. I'm like, how did these marketing managers find us? And this is like interesting to just talk to them. And it's led to actually like, I tell people like it's led to really good connections because I was hosting literally the first marketing meetup that I hosted. I connected with a marketing manager from Russia and he was in an incubator program. And then I talked to him and then he introduced me to a program manager of a startup fund that he was in. And then I was presenting to that startup fund to all their startup companies just because purely from like that random meetup that I hosted. And he's just like, oh, I just saw you on. Yeah.
And the magic of offline interactions, that's something that I truly miss at Out2Bund. Currently, it's like conferences and trade shows. It's been part of our GDM model since we started the company, basically. And now, I mean, 2020, we wrote it off. I mean, you simply cannot rely on anything that could potentially happen, or at least when it comes to Europe. I was also planning to visit NYC and go to Boston in autumn. This also changed totally, and it's off the map at the moment. when it comes to Europe, the regulations that some of the countries are taking is that if you're organizing an event or any sort of a gathering, it should be no more than 20, 30 people at max at the same point. And you should be having all these clean hands and some checks on the body temperature, if you'd say, and so on and so forth. So this has totally changed in 2020. I mean, if you've been counting on events, basically it's off.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it sucks, yeah, because we wanted to go to some e-commerce ones as well, just because like we just wanted to like just experience and like I said, like those offline interactions are super helpful. And yeah.
Good point. Let's see what 2021 will bring. I want to bring you a bit on the founder's perspective, and that's an argument that I've been having with a friend of mine who's also a fellow founder of a startup. And the question that we've been dwelling on is, are service founders capable of actually starting product companies? Mm-hmm. Why not? I'd be very curious to hear your opinion on that.
I think there is there's like a big thing right now, like productized service business, right? That's a really big thing nowadays. So service, for example, like, I don't know, let's say, think about my maid company, right? That's kind of like a productized service where traditionally it was, hey, you would call in and then you would get a quote, not get a quote, but you would then send someone to your home. Like, hey, okay, let me go inspect your home. Let me go check how many rooms you have. We really made it productized where we have like a flat rate pricing, no matter how, just purely based on a number that makes sense. So 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, bathrooms. And then we have like a drop down that sort of makes it like that. And that's really all you get, because we didn't want to do that traditional route of, hey, let me go in somebody, let me get a quote, because that is the like old school model. And then we kind of made it into just like what we see online, where it's like, okay, like you select your options and then you get a price and that's it. And of course, this is where I think sometimes people think about sometimes is when you're running a business like this, you're like, oh, but like, I know my neighbor and his 1 bedroom is larger than mine. Why should he get charged the same? But I'm like, you're thinking about that 1% that's different, but the 99% is going to book normally. And that's going to make you the most money versus that 1%. I think people get caught up in like the edge cases.
Point.
Yeah. And it's similar to programming. You can build an app that's 99% done. And then you get stuck in that 1% of edge cases of like, okay, what if someone enters your name with like a weird character? What if someone enters a space? It's like, yes, there's going to happen that time, but when it happens, let's fix it. And that's kind of how I think founders should think about when they're building their services businesses is 99% of the time, people are going to be happy. And of course, you're going to get like that 1% that's not, and they're going to complain, but you're not going to hear complaints from people that are happy. So don't get too caught up in that sort of mentality.
Good point. Something that I've been observing in the past years is that I meet a lot of service founders who are actually turning into products because many reasons. I mean, because of course, every service company founder sort of visualizes and dreams that at some point of time they can sort of do a spin-off that could be a product, so that they can be ruling both of the worlds, and see how it is different, but at the same time they see it as how it could be even more rewarding running a product company. And quite often what I'm also observing is that by being a service founder and being focused 101% on your service business and trying to run a product company at the same time by doing it as a spin-off or just for the sake of experimenting and trying, quite often these experiments are basically going to the trash bin, simply because of the fact that you as the founder who have this core business cannot focus on 2 different ventures at the same time. And even when you think, for example, in your case, you're having a co-founder, he's sort of taking on part of the operations, even when that's happening, quite often they sort of put some time, let's say 80% of their time into developing the product versus 20% for the core business. 3 to 6 months down the line, it just totally changes. So it's like 80% of where the normal business is coming versus 20% of the product to the product side. And then 12 months down the line, the product is dead because, we have our core business that's giving us the cash in the bank. So who wants to build a product in the end of the day? Are you currently building a product? Are you currently having an experience of what I just described?
So right now we're kind of building a product for Voy Media. I mean, it's already out there. So obviously Voy Media is very service-based, and we have an app that we built on Shopify called Metrics Box that is purely for e-commerce founders. to sort of help them with a lot of the store metrics, such as return on ad spend, conversion rate, because that's kind of what we do right now for our business owners that we work with. So we want to make it into like a product that people pay us, $100, $200 a month, because that's kind of what you said. It's like, that's sort of where we still see like we can get access to more founders that way and build something different for them, because we still know that Voy Media is service-based, and you can only grow so much with hiring people, bringing on new clients and communication. Whereas product, it's always that like the dream of SaaS of like hundreds of customers. One more customer is not going to cost you anything more, where service-based, it's like you need, another human, and that costs X amount of dollars. But yeah, kind of. And I know what you're saying. It's definitely true, because sometimes like for us, like I focus like 90% of my time on Voy Media, getting new sales, getting new partners to work with us. And then back in my mind, I'm like, okay, wait, my developer, I got to talk to him about something. Like, yeah. So yeah, but yeah, it's definitely tough and it's hard. And I think like everybody kind of goes into that sort of trap. And then for us, it's like, okay, for us, it's like, we've done that before. Like, I really want to build like some sort of product, because for us too, we're always thinking about like, hey, if we have this metrics box app on Shopify, we can talk to other founders, and potentially I've seen this stuff work really well in other industries where you can have like a managed services and then say, hey, look, we saw that you're using our app. Based on what you're doing, we think that we can actually help you grow even more. Come work with Voy Media. And it's kind of like more of like a consultant type of like services type of add on to that SaaS app. Because I think a lot of companies are doing that right now with like, I don't know, like what's a big one? Like Red Hat, Fedora, all these like open source companies are like, hey, here's our software open source, but if you want us to manage it, come work with our team. So, but yeah. Of course.
Great. Well, entrepreneurial journey is always interesting, and entrepreneurs are usually seeking ways to create more. In that sense, sometimes a focus is lost, but it's never too late to experiment with something different. Excellent. Kevin, last question from my side. One book that you have recently read, or that is a favorite of yours on the topic of sales and marketing, that could really bring a practical, point of view on the craft of sales, and both sales and marketing.
Have you read the book by The Way of the Wolf? That one by Jordan Belfort? That's like, I love that book. I think it's like really good book about selling, persuasion, sort of keeping people on like sales script, keeping people like to follow your process, like the straight line method that he teaches is I think is really great. I love that book, and I always reference it whenever I'm thinking about sales or how to like do something correctly.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's going to go to the episode's notes. How could people connect with you in case our listeners or viewers just want to say hi and, I don't know, maybe look for some opportunities of mutual collaboration?
Yeah, so you can go to just voymedia.com. That's our website. We have a contact form there, or just email me, Kevin@Voy But we also have a podcast called Digital Marketing Fastlane, and we talk about Facebook ads, sales, marketing is there as well. So that's another great way to find me.
Excellent. Kevin, thank you very much. All the best with Voy and the current situation. And talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to you.
Thank you. Bye.